Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, I mean, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day, we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Two Chunks and a Hunk. Movie musings for mostly everybody. Hello and welcome to Two Chunks and a Hunk. My name is Jordan Wonders, and this week I am your chunk.
I'm Doge, and which one of you chunks has got any guts? Perfect Nicholson. Flawless.
I'm Carter, and you know, Billy, what worries me is how your hunk is going to take this.
I'm worried about how our hunk is going to take this.
I was playing tennis. I was playing doubles tennis with my friends, and I screwed up my leg. So sue me. I pulled a calf muscle doing what I love most. I think if anybody knows me, they know that I love to play tennis.
Yeah.
And
If nothing else.
I think really why I'm a hunk is I have had so much time now in being immobile for so long because obviously I'm always out at the courts.
Right.
I'm just learning a lot about myself, which I think kind of goes in line with our series. So
Who is Carter if he can't have tennis? You know? You never had to answer that before now.
Now all of my shoes are just called shoes.
All your balls are just balls.
Yeah.
All your tennis rackets are just rackets.
The elbow that hurts me is really just elbow.
Just elbow. The courts, the tennis courts, they're just courts.
What is life without
And
tennis?
tennis Carter is just Carter now.
You're just going to have to play Ninus from now on.
Oh my God, dude.
Hey, that sucks so bad.
That's so bad. If you're at home or in your car and you don't get the joke, congratulations.
Hey, what if you're so much better when you come back that you're actually playing a new game called Elevenus?
That's enough.
Just stop. Just stop. It's embarrassing. You're making me cuckoo. We're continuing our series.
Jordan broke, y'all.
Our series with no name. A series devoted to simply our love for...
Matt, we already decided it's Matt and Jack teach us how to not to do mental health.
Yeah, Matt and Jack teach us how to not to do mental health.
Jack and Matt, hey, don't do that.
That's not bad.
You know what I'm saying?
Especially if you sing it to the tune of Yakety Yak. Jack and Matt.
Don't do that.
Man, if it's not obvious that we're doing a double recording today just from the energy in this episode.
We got that end of episode energy right at the beginning of this one. We just finished recording our departed episode.
And Mini Monday and another Mini Monday before that departed episode. We're on cloud 10 even.
I don't know who I am without this podcast mic in front of me. Let's get into this episode, though.
Let's get into this episode, the one where we talk about the movie known only and simply as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't know that I said nest. I said nun, I think, but it counts.
It works.
It counts. This was my first time watching this movie.
Same.
And so I'm excited to talk about it. But before we talk about it, I do need Doge to give me a synopsis. There are so many birds in my front yard right now.
Is any of them a cuckoo bird?
Perhaps. Holy dude, there were 6 more out of my line of sight just now. I think there are 9. That's got to be close to 15 birds just like right outside this window.
Jeez. What a wondrous and wild world we live in.
Crazy. I'm like the freaking Crap Brothers over here.
Synopsisize me, Captain.
Thank you, Carter.
Sorry, I have a burp.
Was that a burp?
I have a burp.
It sounds like something heavy fell down in the next room.
It's because I have a SodaStream tank again. I haven't had one for a couple of years, and I keep making sparkling water, and the bubbles are so small and powerful.
Is that bottle not supposed to be shaped like a normal bottle?
Oh, I put it in the dishwasher. I shouldn't have done that. It also says don't use after 2018, so I'm drinking BPAs all day long.
Ew, after 2018?
Drinking beepums over there.
I'm concerned.
Reduce, reuse, retire, expire. This week's synopsis is written by Ahmet Kozan on IMDb and read to us by Jack Nicholson himself.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
I learned last episode I can't do it if I open my eyes too big. I have to relax my eyes and over-engage my mouth muscles. A criminal pleads insanity and is admitted to a mental institution where he rebels against the oppressive nurse and rallies up the scared patients.
That was good. That part.
Scared
Which was it?
great. Scared. When you said scared was
Scared. Was it rallies?
Rallies was good.
not rallies.
I can't be consistent on it. By the end of this episode,
Which of you nuts has got any guts?
By the end of this episode, I'm gonna do the perfect Jack Nicholson.
I'm excited for it.
Carter, that was Gary Busey.
Yeah, that was all teeth.
Oh, fun.
All teeth, no Jack.
That was
All
Gary
teeth, no
Busey.
Jack.
Makes Gary a dull boy.
Yep. This is my first time watching this movie.
This is prefaced by saying this is with Silence of the Lambs, the only other film to have all. I know when y'all freeze, I freeze to you, so that's funny. Is that what you're laughing about?
Yes. It was you went only to Bob.
Listen, we're almost done. We almost made it through with this Wi-Fi. So besides Silence of the Lambs, this is the only movie to have the big 5 Oscar wins.
Wow.
And the reason that these are weighted so heavily is because they have so much to do with the storytelling. First of all, Best Picture, okay? Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Directing, Best Screenplay.
Yep.
So the big ones, the last 30 minutes of the 1976 Oscars were just all about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest the whole time.
And I think it makes sense. I mean, it's unique and tough, and it feels like such an Oscar movie. You know, it's exhausting in a different way. We just talked about The Departed, and that's a thriller kind of exhausting. This is just kind of I don't know. It's heavy. It's just heavy. The setting is
heavy.
Very, very heavy.
It's a big,
It is
big bummer.
heavy, and this is one of those movies that when I watch it, I have to remind myself that it is a product of the time in which it was created. There's a lot of cultural, racial, and sexual insensitivity in this movie that is, I don't want to call it excusable because even at the time it was not excusable, but it is just a result of the time that it was made.
Sure. It's not excusable, but it's not as surprising to see in a sort of more mainstream setting.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because I think having these roles both played by Jack, I think a lot of times when we're talking about how awful it is, really a lot of it is through the surrogate of Mcmurphy and his character and just how bad he is.
Of course.
To kind of pawn off what would be considered maybe his friends as hookers to mental patients, right? That's very uncomfortable. Is not too far off of Mcmurphy. Feels kind of like an anti-hero, but he's not that different from Costello. Like Mcmurphy's a bad person.
It's Costello origins.
And so it's all, and by no means, I don't want to catch any whiff of me excusing, the times, but talking about, it's not too much different than what I saw him do in 2002.
Right.
So that's either a testament to we still took a long time to figure that out and be sensitive, or it was written as insensitive.
I hope it's the second one. I hope that even in the 70s it was written to be insensitive. But honestly, on the other hand, I hope that 30 years from now, 40 years from now, wow, almost 50.
Almost
That's
50.
crazy.
Yeah.
I hope that almost 50 years from now, we are changing things that we're doing now. Like, I hope we are finding out new ways to be inclusive, caring, and sensitive towards one another.
What if our podcast is just incredibly offensive in like 2060?
It's possible, man.
We'll
It
be
is
pretty
possible.
old and crotchety at that point.
We'll all be burnt to a crisp by climate change by that point anyway. It'll be fine.
It's probably okay. We'll probably just be easy bake oven to death.
We'll be like Shrinky Dinks.
But my point was, it adds an extra layer of discomfort, I think, when watched through a modern lens, a movie like that. So watching it for the first time, after, at one point in my life, making a decision that caring about people through the way that I talk and consume and treat and all that stuff, once I decided that was important to me, there's an added layer of difficulty to watch these things. But I don't think he's ever treated as though what he's doing is okay. He's not called out for it specifically necessarily, but I don't know that you're supposed to watch him offering up his friends as escorts and be like, good job, man.
Yeah, way to go,
what
bud.
a good idea.
Yeah.
And so, it at least makes it a little easier to watch knowing that he is supposed to be a bad dude.
It's not an undercover therapist that wants to study mental patients.
Right.
It's a criminal trying to get out of doing hard labor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his crime is not great.
Yeah, it's no bueno.
Yeah. His crime
is
is sex with a minor. Statutory rape is the crime.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm going to go ahead and say that Two Chunks and a Hunk has an official stance that is bad. How about that?
Yeah, it was tough to get past that for me because I think we're supposed to at least somewhat on some level root for Mcmurphy.
Right.
I think in some way we're supposed to take his side over Nurse Ratched's side of because I think at its a positive viewing of this movie would be, hey, Mcmurphy's able to see the humanity in folks who are, a little bit more neurodiverse than Nurse Ratched is comfy with.
Right.
Right. And he wants them to be able to watch the game and leave and go on trips and live and experience things. And so I think that's an easy thing to get behind, but he is very nearly unroot forable to me.
Yeah.
And it is all because of his crime. And it makes it really tough to get past that.
Worth noting that, this just like The Departed is an adapted screenplay of a previous work. The author,
book, right?
The author of the novel hates this movie.
Yeah.
Not in a Stephen King way, but hates this movie because it is not. And so it makes me interested in not wanting to, because the setting, there's a lot of things that are the same about this in the novel from what I've heard. And I don't think I want to read that.
Right.
I don't think I'm in a place to read that and go through that again and on a more detailed level.
I'm fairly certain the novel is written from the point of view of the character called Chief.
It is.
And I think that changes a lot of what we view.
It's far more interesting that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
But I mean, I get it. You're in the 70s. You want Jack Nicholson to be the lead. It makes sense.
And he is great in this.
He's really good. Yeah.
Jack Nicholson is 2 movies in a row, my super pump.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Nobody is surprised that Jack Nicholson is a good actor. That may be the coolest, mildest take that we ever offer you, our listeners, on Two Chunks and a Hunk.
Hey, guys. Jack Nicholson's pretty good.
Have you heard of this Jack guy? I think he's going to have a good career. No, he's great in this.
Sure. Yeah, he's fantastic.
This feels like, and it's one of those things where watching this for the first time, nearly 50 years after its release, I can't tell if this role is oh my goodness, this role is perfect for Jack, or if this role has affected my perception of Jack. You know what I mean? I don't know if I have a view of Jack that is independent of this movie, independent of The Shining, to be oh, this is great for him. If I just heard about this role in a vacuum, I would love him to play that. Or if my perception of him is so influenced by this role, well, of course it feels like it's made for him because that's what I think of him as. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough. I don't know that.
Yeah, he's just a caricature in general. There's so many things about him that no one else in the world has.
Yeah.
Outside of his personality, the way this man looks, his eyebrows and he's just got features that tend to be with these people that are just icons that live forever as just tales. They're just they'll be around for a really long time. And it's interesting that this is actually near the beginning of his career.
This is 5 years before The Shining.
Yeah, 5 years before The Shining. And so this was kind of I would imagine at his age, winning an Oscar solidification at this point. I think maybe before this, he had maybe done, there was another big movie that he had done before, and I'd have to go look at that. Oh, Chinatown was like the year before.
Oh.
And Chinatown is another pretty critically acclaimed flick.
Yeah.
Just a year before. But yeah, he kind of bursts onto the scene and carries this thing about his acting style that's kind of doesn't really care what you think.
Yeah.
He felt like he had given himself whatever he believed to be a right to his own artistic freedom from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
And people just went with it.
Yeah, I think this movie is full of incredible performances.
Yeah.
Like really kind of a strong showing from every single person. And I wouldn't be shocked to find out that it's because Jack Nicholson showed up. Like the fact that he's there has to, even at that time, like you're saying, like coming hot off of Chinatown, he's got a reputation already. Like the fact that he shows up has got to make people go, time to step the game up a little bit.
Yeah. You think he's that kind of catalytic force that elevates the performance of people around him? Because we've talked before about how like...
absolutely is now, but I have to assume that somebody that magnetic, there's something about his face, like you're saying, Carter. He's got the face of a star because of the expressiveness of it. Like there's just something about Jack. I feel like he comes onto a project even at that time, even with that smaller reputation than he has now. And it's got to make everybody around him rise with the tide.
Yeah.
I feel, like we're getting Christopher Lloyd. We're getting Danny DeVito crushing it. Not that I'm surprised.
Baby DeVito.
I couldn't tell it was him.
Me neither.
First.
Yeah. What's happening too, we talk about the studded cast. This was not a star-studded cast when it came out.
Right.
That's what's so fun.
Right.
It's like Lloyd isn't Doc yet.
Right.
DeVito isn't just any other thing that he did. It's funny that DeVito feels like this is one of his most forgettable roles, but Martini is one of the most wonderful characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I think it's just because it is so separate from things that he's done before. It's funny to think of one of his first big things being a drama with Danny DeVito. Honestly, the same with Christopher Lloyd. But the thing is, though, they are both... This is not a dramedy. I think this is ultimately a drama. There are supposed to be funny parts, right? There's these comedic parts to this story. But everything else is so heavy, it doesn't feel like it's a comedy. So
yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and, speaking of the fun stuff that does exist in this movie, I am going to go ahead and super pump right now.
Yeah, take me there.
My super pump is anytime we get to see Mcmurphy's friendship with the other patients at the facility.
Yeah.
Things like when he rallies around for the World Series, and it starts with just him wanting to do it for himself and trying to pull other people in. But then when he fakes the World Series announcement so that they can all get excited about something. And I know he's trying to be annoying, but it's really like fun and wholesome there for that moment. Specifically, it culminates for me with the fishing trip. He obviously has a selfish reason to do it, but he could have gone by himself if he wanted to. He was already out.
Yeah.
The fact that he waits for them so that he can take them all fishing, and all like the chaos of everybody has snuck around to try and see what they're doing in the room. And then I can't remember his character's name. He abandons his post at the steering wheel. And then
what a great character.
Christopher Lloyd starts to catch the fish, and then everybody just loses their minds all at one time. And it's so crazy and intense and hilarious. But yeah, just the friendship. I think what it is despite all of the character flaws that Mcmurphy has, he is the one person that comes in from the outside and just sees everybody that's in there with him. He sees their value as people. He sees them as humans and hangs out with them. Not always, I think not 100%, but more than anyone else.
I think that's a possible read on it, though. I think that's maybe the positive read on it. But then I think you could also make a compelling case that he's faking the World Series to get them excited about it so he can win the vote to annoy Nurse Ratched. Like, I think you can say he's taking them all on the fishing trip, not because he values them as people, but because he knows that would make Nurse Ratched so angry if he took everybody with. You know what I mean? I think you can make a compelling case that the things that he does that seem to be altruistic for these folks are only ever to annoy Nurse Ratched. And I actually
It's a great
don't know what
conversation.
side I come down on.
Yeah, I know. I lean more towards altruism, if not for
I do too.
everybody, but specifically for, I think the nucleus of the tragedy of this film is the relationship between Mcmurphy and Billy.
Yeah.
He really does. I feel like genuinely his heart breaks for this kid.
Yeah.
And we even have a scene to where he's saying like, why are
Why would
doing
you
all
choose
this
to be here? Yeah.
Honestly, the saddest parts of this have everything to do with the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nurse Ratched, my super pump is Nurse Ratched, and it's really weird. And it's that performance because, we did like our Mount Villain Rushmore and things like that. I'm not about to put her up there because I do feel like that there's some characters that I enjoyed more and I think had a lot of layers to them. But Louise Fletcher, who is the Best Actress winner,
Yep.
there is something subtle about her evilness in this.
Yeah.
And to find out too that she does approach the role as if she does legitimately feel like she's helping them. There is something just so, it's kind of like when you're talking about the difference between Umbridge and Voldemort.
Yeah.
There's an Umbridgeness to her.
Yeah, totally.
In that what's so terrifying about Nurse Ratched is not only do these people exist in that exact setting.
Exactly.
We talked about Matt Damon being able to pull strings in The Departed. The power, the lording power that Nurse Ratched has over the lives of these mentally unstable, what we see are beautiful souls. It doesn't matter if they're beautiful or not. The power that she has is devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying because that's still a thing. Like
Right.
people, it doesn't take much for someone to be given a job that nobody else wants.
Yeah.
That's freaking terrifying to me. Like I was looking up shock therapy stuff and we'll get to that scene soon. That scene makes me sick. It's so sad.
He plays that so well too.
Oof. It just makes me, it's sad. It's tragic. But
Now,
guys, that wasn't, hold up. Did you know that electric shock therapy was not outlawed until like 3 years ago?
You're kidding me.
And there's been an institution recently. There was an article I read from 2020 of an institution recently that like found some way to wiggle around and bring it back. So there's still an existing
Unbelievable
mental institution that uses shock therapy. I can't believe
Unbelievable.
I mean,
I think since you bring up Umbridge, I think Nurse Ratched succeeds in the ways that she is different from Umbridge. Because I think it would have absolutely ruined the movie to me if it was as blatant as Umbridge is. I was actually thinking about Nurse Ratched thinking, man, I'm glad she's not that type of like manipulative and that type of like absolute power. And maybe it is because this is intended for a different audience than perhaps Harry Potter is. I think that's not much of a stretch to assume.
Right.
But Umbridge is so like over the top and clearly Ratched is just so much more nuanced.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I feel that.
It's way more subtle, way more underplayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Two things. One, if Nurse Ratched was played today, it would be Jane Levinson Gould, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Melora Hardin.
Yes.
I mean, she is played today by Sarah Paulson in the Netflix
But I'm
show.
saying this version of Ratched,
This her,
not a prequel version, like this one,
Sure.
this age, all that, 100%. Second of all, I need both of you to out loud say her name.
Ratched. It's with a D.
Thank you. Okay, I was just double checking. It sounded like we were getting a lot of
Ratched.
ratchets thrown around, and I
Sorry,
wanted to
no,
make sure
Ratched.
putting some respect on her name.
It's like wretched, right? That's the
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People weren't
Yeah,
calling
but-
each other Ratchet back then.
There is something that happens in what feel like, I think we use the term a slower movie a
Sure,
lot. And
yeah.
I think that's because it's, literally not moving at the quickest pace.
Yeah, it's a slow burn.
But with slow burns, you do tend to get some pretty rapidly forming character development. Especially if that time is spent in dialogue and just having, it was interesting to hear about how they just did a ton of filming of just filming people's reactions. So we do, in terms of like a therapeutic setting, we do get like multiple, it's either a 3 or a 4 beat. I can't remember how many times we have them all sitting together. And a lot of the times we're not really even looking at people that are talking. And I thought that was an interesting cinematography. I thought that was an interesting cut to do that and just have people reacting. And there's not an actor much better in the world at reacting than Jack Nicholson. That's someone who you want to have. You want to have like that extra screen. Let's just have Jack the whole time.
Jack vision down in the corner.
Yeah,
they don't do that because that's a bad idea unless you're trying to be Ocean's movie or something.
You're trying to make a good movie,
right? But I think Jack would take all the attention from everything else. Probably.
It's also true. Yeah, no, I think the group therapy sessions were interesting because they weren't group therapy sessions.
No, not at all.
It was like Nurse Ratched was like, "Tell me about your problem. Anybody want to speak to him about his problem?" It's like, what is that?
Yeah, a continued look at. I'm becoming increasingly convinced that there might not be good representation of talk therapy in any single movie ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Because like what else? Like we've watched a lot of movies with therapists in them and they're all bad.
The closest I ever got to seeing something that looked like my therapy on screen was the first like 3 episodes of The Sopranos. And I stopped after 3 episodes because it lost me. So
yeah. There's parts of next week's movie that felt more true to experience, but
sure,
we'll talk about that, I'm sure, when we get to it.
But yeah, it's just so. First of all, it's an interesting take on the idea of a group therapy session, but I don't think it was supposed to look like a good one. I think the point is that she I don't know if we're supposed to think that she like relishes the opportunity to sit and force them to talk about those things. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the takeaway necessarily is. Like, are we supposed to go, she enjoys the power she has to make them quake in their boots because they have to speak next, or she enjoys.
No, I think the thing, sorry, I didn't mean to say no. It could be any of those things. I think for me, it is, I don't like that she's not aware of how bad she is. That's what's scary to me.
You think that she doesn't know that she causes intense fear in them?
No, 100%. She doesn't care enough to recognize their emotions as human emotion, right? Because she totally writes them off, believes them to be somehow less than human just because of their neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting, I can see that.
I think that's the read I got from her. Maybe she enjoys being an evil person, though. I think that's
I didn't get
honestly
that
a valid read
necessarily either. For me, and maybe this is saying the same thing. The read that I got was that I think she thinks she's helping.
Yeah. In my mind, I don't think she ever thinks she killed Billy.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is awful.
Right. I think she blames Jack.
Yes.
Or McMurphy. Yeah.
Yes.
I think she says he killed him.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Yeah, that type of person doesn't typically do well at taking responsibility for their actions.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's just an interesting dynamic here because she's kind of Hannibal Lecter in the sense that she's not on screen for that long. Like, by the time the movie's done, we have spent about as much screen time with Scatman Crothers as we have with.
Did him and Jack just be like, let's do all the spooky ones together?
Yeah, maybe.
Let's do the weird stuff together.
Maybe. I thought,
honestly.
By the way, I thought he was fantastic in this.
Yeah.
When is Scatman Crothers ever not fantastic?
Yeah.
Though?
Creepy though.
Jack,
real creepy down in that bathroom.
Yeah.
Poor Jack has been in historically awful environments for movies. Like there's horror stories from both. There's a lot of good stories from this too, from the cast in post, but there's stories of like how tough it was to film this movie in the mental institution. And obviously The Shining is probably the most well known of like, hey,
this was a nightmare working on
bad.
this. Yeah.
This is torture.
Yep.
But it was interesting to hear the relationship between production and the facility. They were actually filming at a facility that was still being used. So some of the extras that we do see are actually mental patients of that facility. And from what I've heard and read, that relationship ended up being a good one. And almost anyone that had anything to do with the production had a handful of patients that they were responsible for, friendships formed, things like that. So, at least there's not just a bunch of crap there. The boat ride, when they're out, evidently everyone but Jack got awfully sick. Danny DeVito can't even go on a boat anymore because of how awful that scene was. Imagine being the guy who's got to look through a camera lens on that the whole time.
There is no way.
And then
for
you
me.
step away from that. I can't even. I was getting sick knowing that. I was like, oh my God.
I just don't get
Absolutely
motion sick.
no way.
Oh, I definitely get motion sick.
No, I know you do. Can you do roller coasters?
I love roller coasters. I can do roller coasters.
That doesn't do it for you? Okay.
I
You can't like read in a car though.
no. Oh my goodness, no way. I got motion sick driving a car. Like a couple of about 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
I was going to the top of the park in Yosemite, and it was dark. We were trying to get up to the top by sunrise, driving up like mountain roads, kind of a bunch of switchbacks, hairpin turns and stuff. I had to pull over. It's a 45-minute drive. I had to pull over 3 times because I was certain, 100% certain that I was going to spew. I never did, but I was like, legitimately have never been motion sick driving before. I was in control of the motion. It still made me sick.
Your inner ear fluid is just a paste.
Gone. It's none. There's none there. I have no fluid in my inner ears.
Thick. Well, it is much like they take a break from their time.
If you jerk the wheel this hard, my inner ear paste is going to go berserk. I'm going to get motion sick, and I'll be pukey sick boy for all of shout announcements.
Let me tell you something. We're about to do a barrel roll because it's time for shout announcements. Welcome to Shout Announcements. It's the part of the show where we give shout outs and also, as you know, of course, make announcements. I'm going to give a big old shout out to Kroger, the bakery department. I just remembered that I have a big old cookie cake sitting in my kitchen for my wife's birthday, and we haven't even touched it yet.
What?
Oh,
congrats.
The Kroger bakery, they be baking. They be baking stuff over there,
man,
guys.
I would love a cookie cake right now.
So I'm pretty
I haven't eaten
stoked
anything
about it.
today. I would love a cookie cake.
I walked up to the counter at the bakery fully intentioned to ask them if they're cool to write cuss words on a cake. And the woman that walked up to decorate the cake was the oldest living woman in the northern hemisphere of the globe.
And she said,
Yeah, she was like, "Oh, can I help you?" And I was like, "Can you just write, oh, you old on this cake?" And she goes, "Spell it for me," and throws me a sticky note. So I just wrote, oh, you old. So
That's
shout out Kroger's Bakery Department.
Shout out Kroger Bakery.
love you, Kroger Bakery.
Love you, Kroger Bakery. You know what else we love? When people support us on Patreon. That's not the only thing we love, but boy, is it nice. We've got a couple of distinct tiers that you can support us at. There's a $3 level and a $5 level. $3 gets you access to bonus episodes of our content and the ability to vote twice in any polls that we may or may not be planning on doing very soon.
Ooh.
And the $5 tier gets you all that, plus access to our patron-only Discord, where we do things like argue about whether Dune's going to make money.
Oof.
It got pretty brutal in there.
Guys,
Got pretty brutal.
we need you to rate and review. We know that there are some of you out there. There's actually many of you out there that have not rated or reviewed the podcast. And I know we live in a world where it's, we stream one place. We don't really I don't feel like a lot of people are using Apple Podcasts. But if you go review and rate over there, that really means a lot to us. We've had campaigns before that have put us number 1 in the world in some countries for TV and film review podcasts because of rating and reviewing. And that's really what gets that algorithm to kind of have more organic finds for people to see us show up on these certain lists. So it's pretty simple. And it's a matter of if you've already rated and reviewed, that doesn't mean you are exempt from this. That means you probably know somebody who either hasn't listened to the podcast or has not rated and reviewed. So go do that. We're trying to get 300 by our 4th birthday, which is just right around the corner. October is almost here, which is very strange. So rate, review, please.
And now it's me, Jack, taking you back into the show. But first, here's an ad.
My name Nipsey Hussle. I'm from L.A.
From 30 for 30 Podcasts and The Undefeated, this is the King of Crenshaw.
I would be lying to say I wasn't inspired and influenced by Nip.
It was a celebration of blackness.
We're not just here to entertain.
It's about the impact that you're putting on that community.
And when he earned enough to leave, he stayed. A story of basketball, hip-hop, and rapper Nipsey Hussle.
Life is really a marathon.
Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word: crispy. But also juicy and tender. Maybe crispy, juicy, tender, all one word? Okay, fine. You'll just have to try our crispy chicken sandwich to understand it.
Get a free medium fries and medium soft drink with purchase of any crispy chicken sandwich. Available only on the app. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Price and participation may vary. McDonald's app download and registration required.
I can't help but notice that neither of you have super pumped or super dumped, have you?
I have super pumped.
I have already super pumped.
There's Ratched.
I guess I'm not that observant.
You can't, you were right though. You can't help but notice that we have. We have.
When you put it that way, it really does make me sound better.
So my super dump is, even though Mcmurphy's lobotomy is a tragic consequence of what seems to me being perceived as really wrong for him to have Candy with Billy in that cell, I could have done without that. I could have done without the, hey, Candy, do me a favor and sleep with this boy.
Yeah. That's pretty gross.
And again, in any describing word I would have for it, I do find myself wondering, like, is that the intent? It's supposed to be bad, right? It's supposed to...
Sure, yeah.
Like, maybe McMurphy is supposed to definitely feel guilt. How can you not? Even though he would possibly argue that Ratched really pushed him over the edge. This wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for McMurphy, right?
Right, sure.
And so that's what's just so nuanced about it and just kind of awful. But either, I haven't decided yet if it's just like, because it made me personally feel uncomfortable. And again, this is my super dump. Or I feel like it shouldn't have been there altogether. Like there could have been better storytelling if that wasn't what did it.
Yeah.
But that was so hard for me. And I just, I'm still wrestling with not wanting it to exist because I just don't want it to, or because I thought it could have been done differently. But that's my super dump.
It's fair. I can get on board with that.
It's certainly nasty. I mean, it's presented like we're supposed to root for Billy.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. It just does feel sort of gross to me.
Yeah.
I have the largest problem with the fact that he feels like he can ask that of Candy.
Yeah. And that Candy's just like, yeah, whatever you say, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Which if she wants to, she wants to. But like the agency thing and the sort of lack of agency is the stuff that grosses me out. Right.
Yeah. I'm not going to pile on super dumps. I'll wait just a little bit for mine because something else that I would like to talk about is specifically Nurse Ratched's relationship with McMurphy. The way that So does she know that he's faking? Is that where the zeroing in
she does
comes from? I mean, right away, like from the beginning, is that where I guess what I mean is, does she see him and go, he's faking, he shouldn't be here? Or does his antagonizing attitude towards her cause her to go, I think he's faking?
There's an assumption. What's tough is like, I assume that she's seen a lot.
Sure.
She's in a position that would point to that. She's got some kind of lead role. So she's been doing this for a long time. I think that's actually what they do with the seasons. It's a prequel, actually, of her history of doing all that. But not that was known already. But I think the reasons for her to go at McMurphy are not super different from... the only one would be that she thinks he's faking it. But I bet she's had doubts before of other patients faking it. I bet she's had those before McMurphy even get there being antagonistic against her. I mean, that's kind of the role that she plays. She is the manifestation of like the straps on the bed. It's like, we're gonna, you get to sleep here, but you can't really move around very much. It's like, right. Yeah, it's tough. I think though, I feel like she caught on pretty quick. I think she caught on pretty quick that he was not really. I think she could tell he was faking it.
I think I agree with that. I think that my read on it was pretty quickly she discovered that he's not, that he doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. They're interesting sides of a coin because I think there's times too that I feel like Mcmurphy feels like she's faking it.
Interesting.
That
faking her care for the patients, you mean?
Yeah. That deep down she's got something. Because he has moments, when he's in there with the head of the institution where he's just like, she bothers him. And I think this is a guy who has had a lot of experience of people that bother him. He's had 5, battery charges and all sorts of stuff like that. We can see him kind of have a short fuse, but there was something different. There was something deeper about her. And maybe in his own kind of screwed upness of just not being a good person, maybe there's things that he saw and he felt that he knew she was in the position of so much more power. Because he would have been faking it a different way, right? If he found out that they could keep him the whole time, that thing he finds out at the pool that's like, hey, you leave when we say so. He starts getting mad and pointing the finger as to like, why didn't anybody tell me? He would have been playing a different role. Yeah. It wouldn't have been what he was because he knows the power that she has. So I think that's kind of what makes it. It's a slow burn. There's a lot that happens for me in this movie after the credits roll, in credits roll. There's a lot of really interesting things that like come about. That's like, I think there's some movies out there like that. I can't really point to any others. And I'm like, ooh, what if that? I wonder if that was happening.
Yeah.
That's valid. That's good. Yeah, there's a very interesting movie. It left me thinking about it for a long time afterwards. Just the implications of the power dynamics, the implications of what if things had been played differently, not movie-wise, but like actual scenario-wise. Movie-wise, though, I do still have a super dump. I guess it's time. I don't love the treatment of the character known as Chief. I don't like that his nickname becomes Chief simply because of his nationality. I don't love that he is effectively just used as an escape tool by Mcmurphy. And I know that their relationship eventually builds to a little more than that. And it seems like by the end, Chief is very sad to do what he does to Mcmurphy and does it. Yeah. It's a mercy kill versus more than anything else.
It's actually a Mcmurphy kill.
It's a Mcmurphy kill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't love the way the movie itself treats the character of Chief. I don't know. It's just for somebody who is shown at the end to be so complex and so like multifaceted for most of the movie, for him to play characterization wise second fiddle to Mcmurphy.
Yeah.
And to be reduced to a big Native American. That is who he is for 3/4 of this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It bummed me out a lot. I did not like that. And I there were several things I did not like about this that are all products of the time. I totally understand that. But it's hard to digest. And when I think about this movie, I think that most of what I think about will be that.
Yeah. It's tough. You look at kind of like the history of movies and stuff. And, in the mid-70s, Westerns have never not been popular, but they are now not very popular. I think 50s, 60s, 70s, like it's still a pretty big deal. You've got your Eastwoods, Wayne to Eastwood and then we just kind of keep going. But, you look at the top credits of this actor and it is a lot of like Westerns and stuff. And so even in that time frame, it's like, it was such a stagnant, like the Native American just kind of played this role. I think one of the things that I didn't like, Jordan, and it felt like it was a creative choice, but kind of I don't know why it felt disrespectful to me, but like when he's doing all of these actions at the end, this is just such a blatantly tribal music in the background.
Yeah, music
totally
was
Native American
rough.
music. And it was just like,
totally. Which sucks because I love that he's the one that could lift the fountain on his own. Like I love that he does it. This symbol of freedom that's bolted to the ground, that he's the one that gets up and tears it open, throws it through the window and just runs into the distance, I assume, to go to Canada and do his own thing. Like,
sure.
Like I love that for him, for his character. And I love that he gets to be the one who rips it out of the ground kind of once Mcmurphy's gone, it's like Mcmurphy was the chain that was holding him down, and then he got to go break the chain that was holding the fountain down, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
So I did appreciate that. It's just the treatment of him as a character, as a Native American man, I don't appreciate.
The more that I'm hearing this, I think it's convincing me that that's actually, because I had a hard time sort of nailing down what is my super dump, what's my least favorite part of this movie, and I haven't already, right? I haven't already super dumped.
I thought you did.
Did I?
Did you not?
It's tricky when we do 2 episodes in a day, right?
It is. There's a lot of dumps and pumps floating around.
A lot of dumps and pumps. If this is a double, then it's a double. But knowing that the novel is narrated by Chief Bromden, it's a little, I don't know. I wish we could have thought of a more creative way to have him actively involved before he reveals that he is neither deaf nor mute. Right? Because it's narrated by him. And so we can have his thoughts and stuff in the novel, but we can't really have that in the movie. It feels like we should have maybe let Mcmurphy in on the secret a little earlier or so. I don't know. It just, especially like the fact that he's the main character of the novel. And then this, the movie like not only moves him away from the main character status, but handles him and interacts with him in a less than respectful way. I don't know. Just, it feels like, man, how cool could that have been in 1975 to do something a little bit more progressive?
Right. Well, and I don't know, for all I know, in 1975, having a Native American man get to be the one who gets his freedom at the end, maybe that was hugely progressive.
This maybe was the most progressive thing people could think of. But it doesn't necessarily hold up to a 50 year later.
Yeah. Well, and this is a great ramp to how I want to end this one and the next one, this series of asking us, like, what are we taking away from this movie? Sort of on a deeper, below surface level kind of, in that way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And for me, I think I've realized that if there is a movie that is content-wise tough because of the time that it was created in, that I saw before that became important to me, I tend to offer it more of a free pass than if I am watching a movie for the first time that I have never seen from an era and that it's doing offensive things. I tend to be more bothered by it, or it like stops me from enjoying the movie more than, obviously I would love to be able to enjoy every movie that comes my way. Right. And so I guess for me, it's this self-reflection of like, why is it that a movie that I'm already familiar with gets that pass? And should I be allowing the art from the 70s to be what it is and being more okay with it? Or should I be looking more critically at the movies that I already am loving because I loved them before? Yeah, I think
probably both,
the answer is both. But just once again, it makes me think I always want to be evaluating why I appreciate and like the art that I appreciate and like, and make sure that I am not offering too much of a free pass to something that I should be saying, you know what, actually, I don't need that around anymore. Or vice versa, kicking something to the curb because I don't understand the lens through which it was made and viewed at the time. Like I want to do a better job of both of those things, I think.
Yeah. In my comm theory courses, one of the first things that we talk about is the danger of a singular worldview, right?
Right.
And a lot of the times that singular worldview can be eliminated by research or just getting to know. Honestly, a lot of it is like Christ-like similarities there. But like the danger of a single worldview, and it's meta in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because being in a mental institution is not necessarily a popular setting for a movie. And so to go there, and I think the danger's there, like we find Mcmurphy finds out that some of these guys are volunteers. Mcmurphy has his own views about what it means to be, for the sake of a derogatory term that he might use, crazy, right? Or like a nut. Right. So these connections that he's building are surprising him, right? These things that he's getting to live in and figure out. He's like, oh, okay. Like there's legitimacy here. Yes, there's things that irritate me, but what person of sound mind doesn't, and like that kind of stuff just starts to happen. There's a danger too of I think how Ratched views her job, views what she's supposed to do, so tied to what she feels like they need. And who knows what that first experience was for her. I haven't watched the show that said, from here on out, this is what I believe these things to be. even looking at the series of like the danger of a worldview of like, if all you've seen is Farmiga as a counselor, the danger of that worldview is, oh, that's what they do. That's a shrink, right? Shrinks play this way. People do these certain things. The metatextual stuff in this movie is like, it can be dangerous and it can age not well for like the role of chief, like of how we treat that. So I think a lot of what that is like with Mcmurphy being thrown right into an environment that is something he's not used to, something that's essentially foreign to him. And then he hopefully, and what you can take from the movie is like he's learning things just because he decided to step into that.
Right.
With that not being the sake of him doing it in the first place is very interesting. That's kind of a takeaway for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I think mine is I'm probably walking away with somewhat of a synthesis of the things that you guys are saying, right? The singular mindset, the dangers of evaluating for better or worse, I think we could probably call this movie a historical document, make a compelling case that it's from a different era with different expectations. Judging works like that based on, like they were not created to say something in 2021. They were created to say something in 1975. So what did this say in 1975? What did a regular old 1975er think about or do? And then in what ways did this movie interact with those and perhaps challenge or reinforce different opinions that they might have had? I just think that's probably something we could do better in most movies that we watch. Most of them are not this far removed from our time. I don't think that me, a 2021er, thinks about or has opinions that are that much different than a 2006er. So The Departed probably didn't require this kind of, mental time travel to interpret it correctly. But I think there's a lot of stuff that I think that's just a good practice to be in when you're watching stuff that you're not necessarily the primary audience for.
Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff. You know what's funny is we're intentionally digging down to like our takeaways, but it doesn't feel that different than a conversation we would actually normally have on this podcast.
Right. We just sort of formalized it.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like it's like, man, I wouldn't normally say this, but if I'm going to bare my soul, this podcast is basically 50% like movies are cool and 50% like I'm struggling with this thing. And then we're just like very real about it. So I'm proud of that. That makes me happy.
Same.
I would like to rate this movie because it's time to do that. And we're going to do that using the scientific cinema scale, which is perfect and as follows. The best thing we could ever say about a movie is own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. The next best thing is buy it. That's followed by rent it and then stream it. After that is forget it, and last, but certainly least, the worst thing we could ever say about a movie.
God hath forsaken us.
I did not think I would do this for a movie that is as decorated as my favorite movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to rent this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think this movie, it feels like there's things about this movie. I'm trying to be careful not to compare it to Silence of the Lambs because that doesn't feel like fair to me. Because Silence of the Lambs is just a narrative and it's not like, there's something about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that's supposed to be like, I feel like we're supposed to learn. There's like a big sit down in the classroom.
The novel is written as a critique of the institution,
sit
right?
down, let's learn about something. I think with that being a massive flagship product for the film and to come up short in ways that I feel like it came up short, it is just a rent. I think what gets it up to rent for me is the performances. I think when you're looking at it as, it's clearly a movie. Acting is a big part of that. Yes, the writing and stuff like that. Directing, yes. So it's checking all those boxes, but I don't think it does well, be it through what we've talked about, through time, the aging process or not, what it should be doing well.
Sure.
Personally.
Yeah.
So it's a rent.
I am going to rent it for almost exactly the same reasons. If we're not careful, we're going to end up in lockstep for all three of these movies. But I'm renting it for pretty much the same reasons. I think it's great. It's great film. It's important. And it was just okay to me for reasons stated previously. I struggled with the movie. I did enjoy it. I do see why it is significant, why it is held in such high regard. And just overall content-wise, not necessarily for me, but it's a rent. It's a good movie. It's worth watching. It's just it doesn't make it into my upper echelon necessarily.
I'm gonna stream this movie.
Okay.
It is a good movie. It is well made. It is very well put together. It is skillfully executed. But I think it's most interesting from almost a more academic standpoint. I think the comparison I'm making in my mind, because I have the hobbies and interests of a World War I veteran, is that this reminds me a lot of like The Planets, a suite of pieces of neo-romantic classical music composed by Gustav Holst.
Yeah, I know Holst.
Or it's, like a John Philip Sousa march, where it's like, this is interesting. The things that they're doing are wild. I can't believe that Holst is doing this in the Jupiter suite, right? This is amazing. But it's nothing that I'm going to turn on in my car when I get ready to go to work. And I'm like, man, can't wait to listen to some Jupiter this morning. Right? It's interesting because of what grows out of it. It's interesting because of how much of that John Williams seems to have completely lifted for the Rebel Alliance fanfare. Right? It's almost exactly Jupiter Bringer of Joy when he plays the Rebel Alliance music. And so that's interesting from an academic standpoint, but it's not quite as fun recreationally.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
That makes sense.
No, I think that's fair. Well, the good news is if The Departed and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest have brought you down at all, next week's look should be at least moderately more heartwarming and uplifting, I would hope.
I'm lifted straight up.
As we close our Matt and Jack do's and don'ts, here's how you don't do the and do, but mostly don't do mental health. We are going to be wrapping up with Good Will Hunting. Very exciting. Can't wait. I haven't watched it yet for the recording, but I'm very excited to watch it. And we also...
It's still good. From the last time you watched it, it actually hasn't really changed much at all. It's still very good.
I'm glad to hear that. We also, as Carter mentioned previously, we will have a special guest host with us that's going to be really cool, really fun. This should be a banger episode. I'm going to say it. I'm not afraid. It's
all
going to be a
signs
banger
point
episode.
to banger.
Yeah. A lot of people have been saying that. So make sure you tune in and go visit a Kroger bakery. Buy a cookie cake. Just support them. They got good stuff going on over there. To end today's episode, I'd like for each of us to say our name and say what you would have written on the cookie cake that you delivered to Nurse Ratched. I would say, I'm Jordan Wonders, and the cookie cake that I sent to Nurse Ratched, they would have to write in small font, not a lot of icing on the outside of the cookie, so we got plenty of room, but I think the cookie cake would say, Dearest Nurse Ratched, I'm writing to inform you that I think the ways that you are approaching mental health and the care of your patients that have been entrusted to you at the institution at which you work are subpar. You need to reevaluate the way that you value, treat, and are kind towards the human beings in your life. Signed, and here's where it gets crazy, John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
He's already dead at this point.
Truly didn't see that coming.
So she's going to be freaked.
Spook her right out.
It's crazy because it's his handwriting. It has to
when
be.
She believes that the ghost of John F. Kennedy has decorated a cake for her, it's going to change some things.
See, I was going to do the exact same joke. I was going to do the same joke of a super, super long text. So give me a moment to recalibrate.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
I'm Doge, and I would write on this cake delivered to Nurse Ratched. This cake is not poisoned.
Ooh.
You can trust me. Signed, Mcmurphy.
Ooh.
But she can't trust Mcmurphy, so maybe the cake is poison. But Mcmurphy said you can trust me, so maybe she should trust him, and the cake isn't poison, and she would wither and die without the cookie cake. She'd never eat it.
She's about to make one of the classic blunders, which is to match wits with a Sicilian.
Exactly.
When death is on the line, clearly I cannot choose the wine glass in front of me. I am Carter, first of all. And mine would be a collection of numbers.
Ooh.
0.386, 0.259, handful of those.
Sure.
You'll have, 4 to 3, 6 to 2. And I think I don't know how educated she is on this, but I do think that this would be something that would pique her curiosity. It's like, what do these mean? I want to be in the room when she finds out that those were the main statistics of that season's World Series.
Yeah.
And that's just a jab, isn't it? It's like you took it from us on the TV. You thought, but I do know exactly what happened in that game. You go find out how.
Yeah, that's good. And all of these cookie cakes, by the way, are the ones with chocolate frosting, which are objectively the worst.
I like the chocolate frosting.
I thought you were about to say best.
No,
yeah, the black and white, frosting. That's the way to go.
The white frosting slap. No, let me back it up. Hold on. Listen to me. If we're talking Great American Cookie Company, chocolate frosting can stay. That's a good time.
Yeah, that's all I ever think of with those.
If we're talking
I don't get off-brand from Kroger. I'm a name-brand cookie cake
If we're talking that like whipped chocolate frosting, yuck.
I'd still eat it.
Yuck. It tastes like Jell-O pudding farted on the cake.
Headlines and hot takes, they have their place. But at our podcast, ESPN Daily, we don't just skim the surface of sports. Dude, I mean, this clearly transcends blood feuds, rivalries, sports. This is something far, far deeper than that. I'm your host, Pablo Torre, and every day we try to dive into the stories behind the athletes.
The picture of him in the dugout afterwards just looked like a guy who'd had his heart ripped out.
Listen to ESPN Daily wherever you get your podcasts.
For the ones going above and beyond. For the ones reaching out, helping out, and lending a hand. For the ones people count on. You can count on Grainger. Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry. Backed by 24/7 customer support and specialists to help with hard-to-find products. Because you've got everyone's back. We've got yours. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger. For the ones who get it done.